I seriously love that song so hard. If you've never listened to Elite Gymnastics, I highly recommend them. I'm a big time music fan, so if you have any questions about music or anything like that, or if you have any suggestions for music, I am happy to hear them. It's another passion of mine, and I hope you like it too. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I have my chocolate milk in this blue cup. I have my spirits high. I have a fresh farmer's tan after spending my weekend at the Minnesota State Fair. And most importantly, I have knowledge about the dive composition, including our last segment of the night, where we're going to look at what I call the Famine, another way to beat the dive composition, that insidious composition that gets in your safe zone, disrupts you, disrobes you, makes you unhappy, makes you sad. We're going to do something about it. I will not let you leave this episode unequipped to deal with the dive composition. So let's go ahead and take a look at the final game of the night. Let's take a look at Alternate versus Gambit Gaming. And this one will take a little bit of searching, simply because at a certain point Gambit has some errors in execution, but at the same time we're going to talk about the general principles and how it works, and hopefully that'll give you, hopefully that'll equip you to be more ready to deal with the dive composition in your own way. So just flipping over. Okay, let's take a look at the lineups once again. So full screening this real quick. I'm going to make sure that we can see everything. All right, we can. Once again, this is Alternate versus Gambit. Alternate is the one with the dive composition, and with J. White, with Lysandra, Vi, and Malphite, as well as the dash from Graves and the overdrive and the hook from Blitzcrank. There's obviously a lot of dive potential into this composition, and the way that Gambit have responded to this is very different from the wall composition, because it's not a 4 protect 1. Varus isn't exactly one of those hyper carry AD carries. He's good. He lends a lot of damage, but ultimately the tip of the spear that they're going to be looking at is going to be Kassadin. And the way that this composition works is really, really cool, because what it's going to do is using a combination of mobility across the board, as well as some defensive tools in, for example, the silence and the ultimate from Varus, as well as the crescendo from Voidal. They're going to be able to stop people in their tracks. And what they're going to do is they're going to use their collective resources as a team to push down towers one by one with strategic and efficient force. And the reason that this works out is because ultimately what the dive composition benefits from is their ability to ambush, use their map control to ambush people, to get behind turrets, to get in your jungle, counter jungle, dive from the tri-brush into the bottom lane, dive from the tri-brush into the top lane, get into all those places and ultimately get kills where they rightfully shouldn't have them, but because they have the mobility and the burst damage, they're able to do so anyway. So we're going to go ahead and just roll forward a little bit into the game. And so I think we'll be able to start here. And this is just a level 1 fight. And unlike the wall, where there was a strong level 1 concept in mind, there really is no purposeful level 1 execution going on. There's no map presence, anything like that. There is a counter jungle simply because Alternate are able to use the Blitzcrank to pull the blue buff across the wall, and therefore get the opportunity to do a little bit of counter jungling early. But what we really want to pay attention to are actually the lanes that are going down. So early in this level 1, Gambit actually stayed back. They didn't want to show their hand, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to get map control as quickly as possible. They're trying to starve out the dive composition, take away their resource, their ability to ambush and things of that nature. And they're doing this through using 2 methods. One, they want to take advantage of the mismatch in the top lane, so they send their duo top lane, or to the top. I can only assume that if the other team had predicted this, they would have swapped eventually, or figured out some other way to make it work. But ultimately, this is their blueprint in the beginning: is they want to send the duo top against the one to get that 2v1 matchup. And then they've got Renekton down at the bottom, who is both tanky and a little mobile, so he has a lot of survivability in that bottom lane. And the reason that that's so important is because they get the mismatch on the top. And then with a versatile and mobile survival heavy bottom solo laner in their own 1v2 lane, they're able to prevent that return tower from happening. Because more often than not, if you watch, for example, the LCS in North America, you see that as soon as one team takes a tower, the other team responds. That's trades. If you can prevent that return trade from happening, you gain an advantage immediately. So let's just roll the clip. We're going to see the duos head up to that top. Sona's going to put down a couple strategic wards just to see how things are going on, or just so they can see things that are going on and prevent the gank in that top lane. And at the same time, Darian is going to be down here in the bottom lane. He's just going to be surviving. He's going to stay away from that hook, and he's going to get zoned out from farm a little bit, but they know that the same thing's going to happen in Malphite up top, so it's not a big deal. We'll talk a little bit about the Kassadin mid because that is an important part of the composition. The idea is to strategically starve out the other team by using a combination of mobility and smart tower pushes, creating mismatches and pushing down the towers. The game is not, however, a return dive, and here unfortunately we do see the first kill go down to Kassadin, so it's not a perfect plan, but once again, Gambit is looking at the long game. It's another one of those kills that's not such a big deal because while it does keep him from farm, and while it's not great, obviously, it's not what you want ideally, in the long run, Gambit actually still has a plan, and it's still going swimmingly for them. So once we flip up to that top lane, we see Diamond has rotated up here after finishing his first round in the jungle. If we roll the tape a little bit, we've already got a mismatch in this top lane, so why send the jungler to the top? More importantly, why send a jungler that provides mobility and using that inner flame wave clear to the top? If we think about these things, suddenly we see why this choice of lineup was so important. Karma, as a matter of fact, Karma may be the one that provides maybe best suited for this composition to a very unique degree. He may be, or she may be the best one for the job, and we'll see why. Okay, so what we see is they're pushing the lane. Diamond is using this Q a lot, that kind of AoE explosion to clear the wave clearly. They're not so worried about CS because they're all attacking it, even Sona. And while I'm sure they're trying to get some last hits in the process, we can even see auto attacks coming out from Sona onto these minions, just trying to clear the wave. In the meantime, Darian is taking some damage down at the bottom, but as you can see, we see the harassment coming off, we see the Q going out again, the piercing arrow. They're just trying to get the pressure down onto this top lane. And they're going to continue to push, and we're going to see that. Now the thing I want to point out here that's really important is that in the mini-map, the fuzzy mini-map, you can see that this dot is up, this dot is up, this dot is up, and even the blue buff is up. The jungle is up. Diamond remains in this top lane. And that's obviously very intentional. That's on purpose to a large degree. By having Diamond stay in this top lane, they are just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until Malphite will have no more room to operate. So here we see, if we just watch the film a little bit, they're going to continue to wave clear. They will get backed off just a little bit, but we'll see that they're going to wave clear right back. The tower has gone very low down bottom, but ultimately Darian is standing up to the task. He's using his slice and dice to get some CS. He's actually leading in CS over Malphite by a considerable margin. It's hard to see the numbers, but that is a 4, and that is a 17. Malphite is being completely zoned out of this. They're absolutely shutting him down, and he's running a teleport that would normally allow him to get into that bottom lane and take out Darian or take out the duo lane if they went for equal lanes, but he's getting zoned out so hard that some of that aggression is just cut off. It's smothered. It's just cut off at the knees. So what we're going to see is Diamond is actually going to head back, and he's going to head down bottom, because at this point the tower up here is so low that the dual lane will be able to take it out eventually. And with Kerp still at 4 CS, things are obviously going really well for them. But with his turret getting so low, obviously Gambit's going to want to do something about this. They're going to slice and dice, and here we go. The shield comes out, and they're going to use the tether to try to ward off this bottom lane. So what they managed to do is by rotating the extremely mobile Karma down bottom, and now using her Q for even more wave clear down at the bottom, they're going to get even more CS on Renekton. They're going to use this tandem for some strong tower pushing, and they're going to be able to push or get some return pressure while the top has been pushed so much that they'll be able to get the turret. So there we go. We see the blue turret going down up at the top. And ultimately, this is just a little skirmish, a little bit of counter jungling going on by Aranea, really well played by him. But when the blue lane comes back to push, we're going to see they're going to go for the dragon. They're going to rotate they're going to rotate more towards that middle lane for that dragon. But ultimately, it is 7 minutes in, and even though that turret fell something like 2 minutes ago, the damage is the turret down here at the bottom is still just low. It hasn't fallen. They're going to steal the blue buff again because they got their own blue buff stolen. And then what we're going to see is the duo lane of Gambit is going to rotate down bottom. They're going to force that mismatch again, or at least force an equal match, and suddenly the blue team is behind. Alternate is just behind. They didn't get the trade. They didn't get the pressure. They're just one turret behind. They did manage to get a kill, which keeps the gold equal. But ultimately, this composition isn't about kills. It's about map control. It's about maintaining that control. Here we see the ultimate actually coming out for Darian just to keep himself alive, but here comes Sona into this bottom lane, and with Varus rotating down there too, they will obviously have a lot of pressure on this bottom lane. So we'll continue to see that throughout this game. I'm not gonna fret too much on individual fights because ultimately the team composition is just strong. They're going to use their natural synergy in the team fights to win them. There's less of a specific positional battle going on and more of this objective-based play. Gambit will eventually lose their ability to control the map. They will start to lose some turrets. Here we see Alternate actually manages to take 2 as they start to fail in some respects. With this composition. But this is an important moment in the game to point out. They're down 3-1. They're actually down 2 turrets to 1. And so what they did in the beginning is they picked a mobile snowballing mid laner. And they want him to become the tip of the sword. He's not somebody who's going to make an immediate contribution. He's going to be strong in the early game, but he's not going to be the playmaker that he will be once he reaches his full form. So what they do is Alternate is going to push this mid lane, and they're going to try to take down this turret. And so they send the core of Gambit to this mid lane to defend the push. Then what they do is they send Alex Ish down to this bottom lane on the Kassadin to farm freely. Alternate actually ended up responding really well to this by sending the AD carry down to the bottom because he has the escape mechanisms and the return damage to stand up to Kassadin to a degree. But obviously they want to maintain, or this actually works out okay for Gambit simply because it keeps the lane frozen at the river. Whereas if Alex were up here, he'd most certainly be dead simply because while Riftwalk is strong, they would be able to collapse on him in the jungle and take him out. And he gets this free farm, which is going to allow him to develop as a weapon while the rest of the team uses mobility and coordination to maintain map control. And so going just a little bit further ahead, things will start to, again, they continue to go in Alternate's favor. Gambit actually not getting the tower kills yet, but then they start to get more tower kills. They start to get more kills, and this is the big swing. We were at 6-3, and suddenly we're at 9-7. The reason for that is because as this composition develops, Darian, who has been able to outfarm his opponent by a large margin, by 20 or by 40 CS, now has a Sunfire Cape and a Spirit Visage, as well as another Giant's Belt and a Doran Shield. He's very tanky. The shields with the Morella Nomicon and the other items that Karma will eventually build into, the shields as well as the Q damage and the tether of Karma are suddenly becoming so strong and providing so much defensive and mobility, so many defensive and mobility based options to the fight are going to make a huge difference in team fights. Kassadin obviously able to build up that needlessly large rod as opposed to the Abyssal Scepter of Lysandra. But here we can see a 52 CS lead for Kassadin, able to build up that farm lead by going into the off lanes and farming. Here we see he's down here again, whereas the red team have warded their jungle, profusely, and they've actually managed to they did that in response to the alternates attack. They actually were able to get into their jungle, and so they retake map control with this vision, and then they're just going to use their mobility to continue to push towers down. So what happens is, because the tanky because the tanky top laner suddenly becomes this frontline threat, and Karma's mobility allows them to move around a little bit faster than their opponents, and Kassadin is snowballed into this scary champion, suddenly the dive composition is starting to run out of options, because even if they dive into the line, they have a shield, they have mobility, and they have a silence to keep any further follow-up damage from happening. So moving forward, what we'll see, let's just get to the point where they are pushing down the Nexus. Here we see Gambit's turret lead now up 5-3. They will take the Baron, and this is the point where they'll start to push down. Here's what ultimately happens. Let's go right there. Gambit will be, they're up 13 kills to 4. Obviously a monumental gold lead, because at this point they've managed to, and that map control has smothered the blue team. They suddenly don't have those assassination options. We'll see ganks if you watch the full replay of Vi running into the middle of a lane, trying to get a kill, and then just getting stopped in her tracks because she doesn't have any space to operate. She has to go deep into enemy territory in order to even do anything, and that's a problem if you're based on hit and run, get in, get out. It just doesn't work anymore. And here we see Darien in this tanky frontline position, as well as with the Baron buff. Once they get that map control, that turret control, they get objective control, which allows them to get Barons and Dragons and build this gold lead, as well as get the Baron buff, which allows this prolonged siege. Works perfectly with the tanky frontline of this alligator, and then the follow-up damage coming from behind. So what we'll see is, as this minion wave comes up, Gambit will eventually get to a point where they will literally just walk over the other team. There we go. There's the jump in. There's the ultimate. He gets frozen just for a second, but as we can see, his ultimate on, he's so tanky. They've thrown everything at him, and he still has not died. The ultimate comes out, and they leave the crescendo for last, but ultimately there's so much power coming out of this team, and so much defense with their mobility and the health regen of the ultimate from Renekton, that there's just nothing to stop them. The blue team threw everything that they had at them, and it still wasn't enough to take down their frontline tank. So here we go. They'll take down the inhibitor, and then they'll literally just roll down to this bottom lane, clear off the minion wave, take another one, and they've just become this immovable object. They simply cannot be removed from this base. They're putting down tons of damage. The Baron health regen does help, but again, that was just a consequence of the map control that they gained by using their mobility and using the teamfight coordination to take turrets and gain map control. So now up 7-3. Eventually the game ends. Kind of peters out from here. They will gain so much control over the game that, again, they'll just walk back into the base. As we could see, minion wave pushed here, and then forcing its way down the top lane with all three inhibitors gone. At this point, Alternator just trying to do a last-ditch attempt to try to get some lane protect, or get some a bit of a cushion in their lanes, and then hopefully win a team fight and hope that makes a difference. But here we go. RNA actually getting caught out. There's the slow from Graves will actually stop them just for a moment, but pushing down in multiple instances. They've just got so much tankiness in this lineup, as well as mobility. With the Nexus turrets down, all they're going to do is waltz in. Even with the ultimate going down, there's the crescendo encounter, the piercing arrow going through, the ultimate Renekton clearing the fight, slicing and dicing, and just not able to go down. They will take down Aranea, and they will put on the damage down onto Lissandra, taking her out of the fight, and then we'll turn and they will take it out. And so, as you can see, what happens in the Famine on the most basic level is using mismatches and mobility to hit and run, to work together in tandem, and use a combination of tankiness and mobility to really suffocate the other team. Never let up map control, because the one thing I didn't show you in that game, because it would have taken too long, is that once they did relinquish map control, once they let their foot off the gas, even for a second, Alternate were able to get up into the blue buff side of the red jungle, get a pick off. Gambit came in just one after the other and got slaughtered, and that's actually what prolonged that game as much as it did. If Gambit had warded that jungle and seen that coming, or just played a little bit more conservatively and used their group synergy, then that actually wouldn't have happened, and the game wouldn't even have been that long. So, we're reaching the end of the segment for tonight. We've talked about the 3 rules of ladder, which are communicate, be positive, and never flame. We've talked about the dive composition, a composition that creates opportunities where you least expect them and uses map control as well as the fog of war to give itself opportunities and snowball champions. We've looked at identifying the draft, which again is based around that linchpin jungler, or the linchpin of that composition is the jungler, that mobile tanky jungler, as well as the burst damage of the mid lane and the ultimate of the top lane, so that we can identify it in the draft. We've talked about 2 ways to respond to it. The wall, which is a full protect 1 composition that keeps an offensive weapon healthy while slowly building up surefire farmers until map control is total. And we talked about the famine, which uses quick, heavy pressure onto single turrets to gain map control and suffocate the dive composition and keep their assassination attempts from ever happening. Ultimately, there are more ways to respond to the dive composition. There are. I have not found them yet. But as soon as I do, I will do a part 2 to this dive composition Sundays or SSS, and we will talk about other methods of beating the dive composition. I'm sure there are plenty. These were just 2 recent events that were extremely topical. So ultimately, I hope you learned something, and I hope you got a little bit of entertainment. I know I enjoyed talking about it. I'm losing my voice because I'm talking about it so much. But I wanted you to come here, and I wanted you to learn something. So I sincerely hope you did. I will continue to do this segment every Sunday. I post an article on Cloth 5 on Saturdays, and you can read that there. I will archive these on my YouTube channel, and if you want to visit see past episodes or see other content that I have produced, go ahead and visit ianjbarker.weebly.com. I'm working on a new domain name, and that will happen. In the meantime, I'm setting up a regular casting schedule. I will start broadcasting practice games. Basically, I'll just take a game from the League of Legends client and that says spectate now. Click spectate now, and then kind of give a rundown of what's going on. And that'll be happening Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And this will become a regular schedule. I'll be doing Samuel Strategy Sunday on Sundays at 7 to 9. I'll be doing practice casting Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 9. And the rest of the week I'll be kicking it. So, thank you for watching. I'm glad if you stopped by. I really appreciate it. These will be archived on YouTube for your future reference. And the important thing is that you learned something, that you grew as a player, and that you became the person you wanted to be. That's it for me, guys. Thanks a lot. I'll go ahead and send you out with some music. And I want to remind you, this is Ian J. Barker, a.k.a. Samuel, reminding you to always be next level. Have a great night.